Sentinel Online, now loading the Geekcast radio network of podcasts.
Coming up on MWIRE Weekly for the week of October 14, 2013, we got to look at the Gravity Errors, Michael Bay to possibly direct a horror film, and will Vanilla Ice be in the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie? That and a look at Captain Phillips, all for you to enjoy. Hello and welcome to MWIRE Weekly for the week of October 14th, 2013, where we look at the week of movies that was. Joining me on today's adventure are our co-hosts, Kevin Optimus Solo. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
And Michael Booth Ninja Powers. How are you?
Good. I am glad to be here.
That's good. I would not like it if we had to force you to come.
No, I'm glad to be here. Had family troubles. I don't know. Started late Wednesday night into early Thursday, and had to reschedule. Move some stuff around, and luckily Dan, you were able to fill in for me on Altered Geek. But very good job filling in for me. But I'm not giving you my spot.
Yeah. I'm happy to pinch in here when I'm needed.
But no, I was really it was hit and miss there for a second, but I got things straightened around, and now I'm here and ready to go.
Awesome, great. For those joining us, this is our second episode, and what we'll be doing for today's episode, and hopefully for the remainder of a very long and lucrative podcast, we start with a look into what we've been watching for the past week. We'll move into some news discussion about the big news, some look at the box office and other big stories that are out there. Move into our main attraction, where this week we'll be discussing Paul Greengrass's newest film, Captain Phillips. Then we transition to coming attractions, the theater releases and upcoming DVD and Blu-ray releases, and we'll finish with our credit conversation, where we will discuss our last week's question about theater food and how you handle that, and we'll introduce a new question for next week that we'll hopefully get great feedback on. So to start off today, we will be discussing what we've been watching in the past week. So who would like to start and kind of go over what a film that they've saw in the past week that they feel warrants some discussion?
I'll jump in here because mine's probably going to be really short. I started to watch Shaun of the Dead on HBO. And I've seen it before, but I decided I usually, when I'm just in the house by myself and my wife's at work, I like to put something on the TV just to watch. And lately Netflix has been letting me down, so I've been jumping over to HBO Go, and they had Shaun of the Dead on there, and I watched like half of it before I got up and went and did something else. But I really like that movie. I like Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and Edgar Wright. It kind of comes back to, they just did World's End this last summer that wrapped up the trilogy of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz. And I got halfway through, and it's a really good zombie movie, I think. But wow, that's about all I've got. Because I was gonna make a point to, since we started doing this, to at least watch a movie off either like on Netflix or something, just so I have something to talk about here. And just this last week has been so crazy. I haven't had time to watch a complete movie.
Yeah, I understand that. Shaun of the Dead that is a great film, and it's one of those that's endlessly rewatchable because there's so much to that movie, even like in the background that you don't even notice. Like that opening of that film is, you see the inner workings of the zombie movie coming into play and how it handles that and how smart that movie is. I think Edgar Wright, to me, his films, along with like the Coen brothers, are those films that you have to watch multiple viewings to really understand all the all the jokes that are in there, because he makes a point of like writing the script and then writing it backwards. So there are a lot of jokes that pay off at the beginning on a rewatch they wouldn't on the first time viewing, and I think you really notice that, and it makes it more rewarding when you even go back and watch it on, even if it's just on cable, because it's so deep in jokes and cleverness that it's just a great film, especially now with Halloween coming along. It's a perfect opportunity to check that out.
Yeah, I mean, I finished Spaced, the British TV series that he did in the late 90s. I don't know if either of you have seen that.
I have not. I've always wanted to, but I have not checked it out yet.
It's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost again. Obviously, it's Edgar Wright. It's only 12 episodes, I think, the whole thing. Or it's either this really big number, right? It's either 12 or 24 because it's a British series, but it only went for 2 seasons. And a lot of some stuff in Shaun of the Dead was funnier having seen Spaced recently, because the group that they run into when they're trying to make their way to the Winchester.
Yeah, that's almost like the opposite group of them.
Yeah, the opposite group of him. The leader of that opposite group is his roommate in Spaced.
Ah, okay.
And some of the dialogue that they exchange earlier on in the movie is kind of like a play on Spaced and like what they've been doing. They kind of have like they're kind of talking to each other, and the background tone to it is talking about whether or not the TV show is going to kind of air again, or what they've been doing since the TV show went off the air. So like there's this subtext of them playing the characters from Spaced, but having a conversation that those two would actually have in the movie. And that was fun to actually see that. But that's pretty much all I've been watching this week. I was going to try and watch Minority Report on Blu-ray because I do have that. I got as far as taking the shrink wrap off of it.
That's the first step, right?
Yeah, it's the first step, right? And then I went and did something else.
I have many Blu-rays that I've yet to do that, and I've been on my shelves for a couple of years now, and I still have shrink wrap on them. So,
as do I.
How about you, Kevin? Anything you've watched in the past week?
This is going to sound like a weird episode, I guess, but for those of you that aren't aware of my personal situation, I basically have been living out of a hotel 5 days a week for the last about 2 months. So really I've been on a kind of a weird schedule, because the time that I do get home, it's like a mad marathon to try to free up as much DVR space as possible on TV shows, so that then the 5 days that I'm going to be gone, I can actually record stuff without running out of space. So yeah, I really haven't had much of a chance to do much movie watching, but that's all changing now because my hotel life is over, and I'm back living in my own home 7 days a week. So my movie habits will go back to how they usually are during the year. So I really, outside of our main attraction this week, I wasn't able to watch hardly anything except for what I watched on my DVR to free up space, which was all just regular TV shows.
Yeah, I did a lot of TV show watching too.
So, but I promise everybody that we will have more movie talk in the future, because I usually do see more than that. And I have some, like you said, some DVDs and some Blu-rays that are in shrink wrap still that I would like to give a watch to for the first time on that format. So when I don't go out to see extra movie in the theater, I'll try to be sure to do some of those, so we have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, the good thing about watching movies and doing this podcast is when you're watching them, you don't feel like you're just watching a movie. You're also doing research, so you feel ultimately productive. But I do have a few things I want to touch upon real quick. If you listen to the Old Good Geek episode that I hit for earlier this week, I discussed a film that I kind of gave a little preview of a movie I was going to talk about that I watched earlier that day, which was Joss Whedon's latest film, Much Ado About Nothing. Joss Whedon, of course, who's infamous for the Avengers, Buffy, Firefly, all that. I myself, I'm not a Joss Whedon fan or hater. I just haven't really experienced much. Like, I've never watched Buffy or any of his television shows, really. I've seen Serenity. I've obviously seen the Avengers. Probably the only other thing I've experienced was his run on the Astonishing X-Men. But the Much Ado About Nothing is obviously his interpretation of the famous William Shakespeare play, or Bill Shakespeare for his friends. it is pretty much the as much polar opposite as you can get from the Avengers as possible. It's believe he shot it over a weekend or at his house. It appears it takes place during present day. It's similar to the Romeo and Juliet movie with Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet that takes the dialogue of William Shakespeare and places it into the present setting. It's the same thing. It's a little bit different though, in the way that it is completely unstylized. It's black and white. It's very cheap, and you can tell. Overall, I did like it. Somehow the actors and many of them are. If you're a Whedon fan, you'll recognize a lot of them. People like Clark Gregg, Agent Coulson, Nathan Fillion, Amy Ecker, other people that you've seen in Joss Whedon films. Their personality does really work well with the Shakespeare subtext and the dry wit of much of that play. It does kind of though wear its budget on its sleeve. It's obviously that it is a very cheap film, and in some ways it feels more like a TV special than an actual movie or like a student film or an experiment, just because it is based into, it's all taking place in this one house, and the black and white cinematographer doing it in black and white I think was more of a choice to try to hide just how basic it looks. And some of the actors are good, but they're not great. When you get some of those more prolific Shakespeare diatribes, they're not as good at handling those or some of the darker moments. But when it's being humorous or being witty, it's great. Anytime it times to go down to the more serious route, it's a little hammy and not as strong. But if you're a Whedon fan or if you love Shakespeare, I think of all the adaptations that have come out recently, I think it's probably one of the better ones that I've seen personally. But
actually,
have you had any interest in that film? Much Ado About Nothing?
Oh, I do. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I actually have a collection of all. I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. I actually took a class strictly just on Shakespeare in college once, and I collect all the different adaptations, whether it be straight Shakespeare or the more modern day adaptations. So I'll definitely be picking that up and watching it at some time. I'm also interested in Romeo and Juliet, which is currently playing in the theater, to see what kind of take that is on it. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I just haven't had a chance to see it yet.
Okay, if you're a big Shakespeare fan, I would love, because I myself am not well versed in the world of Shakespeare, so I would be kind of interested in seeing how well it really handles that material. Because I really can't give an insight into that,
and that's one of them. That particular play is actually one that I specifically studied a little bit, so I'm definitely interested in seeing that. And I've seen another version of it. Not that there's only been one. There's so many versions that people don't realize are adaptations of Shakespeare stuff because they disguise it more.
Examples?
Off the top of my head, and now you're going to put me on the spot, but I'd really have to check my DVD shelf because I'm not big on titles, but there is some that they don't advertise it as such, and it doesn't have like the straight name like Much Ado About Nothing or Romeo and Juliet, and they just are titled something else. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? In a way is an adaptation of Shakespeare.
Lion King, they noticed, isn't that supposed to be an adaptation of Hamlet? People say.
Yeah, I don't buy that one quite as much. But there are ones out there that disguise it more, and I'm trying to think of the one that specifically is Much Ado About Nothing, and I can't think of it, so I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
Ray Fiennes, just like his first the first film he directed, the guy who plays probably most famously plays Voldemort in the Harry Potter movies. His first movie he directed was, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but Colonel Anus, or I forget, but that too was an adaptation of.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And that one too takes place in modern times. I wasn't a huge fan of that one as much. I don't know. I just couldn't. Because that's very much because it's very political and more war based, and taking some of that dialogue and placing it into the common today's time period didn't work as well for me. But since with Much Ado About Nothing, it's a very basic story, and it's really just human drama, and you can do it in the house because it all takes place in really confined settings, and it's really about the characters, not necessarily about the story. For the most part, at least the way that was presented in that movie. But so I would say, if not one I would recommend buying, but a rental. It's in Redbox right now, so it's worth $1. So
I remember seeing the Denzel Washington one, and I think I saw that in that one must have been in high school that I saw that with Denzel Washington and Keanu Reeves. So it'd be interesting to compare the two and rewatch that one right before I watch this newer one.
Yeah, so hopefully maybe coming up we'll hear what you have to say about that one. The next one I wanted to talk about, I'll be brief because I'll be running a review for this one, is this past year we've had a huge influx of coming of age stories. There was Mud, The Kings of Summer, and the one I want to talk about right now is The Way Back. It's written and directed by Nate Fraxton and Jim Rash. Those Community fans will recognize those names, fans of the television show Community. They're also the writers of The Descendants, the movie that came out a few years ago, was nominated for Best Picture. I think they actually won for screenplay. I think Jim Rash is famous for his role at the Academy Awards, the one when he did the Angelina Jolie leg maneuver that became pretty infamous. But what The Way Back is about, it's about this kid who is spending the summer with his family. His mother's new boyfriend, played by Steve Carell, and his not stepsister, but the daughter of Steve Carell. And it's kind of a newer relationship. They're still kind of figuring each other out. And he is, I guess you would say, he's like a wallflower. Leon James plays the main character, and he's very quiet. He's kind of you could blink and you miss him type of guy. He kind of just soaks in the background, doesn't say much. But he has this huge conflict with Steve Carell's character, who is kind of he's a jerk. He's a huge jerk, and Steve Carell plays that part really well. I'm quite a Carell fan, and it makes sense that he can play that role because his character Michael Scott in The Office he can be humorous, but he just turn a dial a little bit. He's really kind of a conniving, evil person, and in this it's the same. He plays a lot of mind games with Liam James, and he's trying to kind of take control and almost subserve his relationship with his mother. But overall, I did enjoy the film a great deal. This cast is solid all the way through. Allison Janney from The West Wing plays this really crazy neighbor. It's kind of an alcoholic. Sam Rockwell, who I love, is great as he works at this water park. He reminded me a lot of Matthew McConaughey in it just slipped my mind, the coming of age film from the early 90s. Oh, I can't think of it right now, but
Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused, exactly. His character's similar in the way that he's kind of this older guy who's kind of a fly by the seat of your pants type of character, but he's a little bit deeper. But it's a really good story. It's coming to DVD and Blu-ray shortly. It's got a really heart to it. It's what I liked about it too. It's the way it's set up. It's a movie that can take place today, or it could have taken place 20 or 30 years ago. It's a timeless tale in how they put everything together. And like I said, the cast is really strong. And I'm a sucker for coming of age tales. I don't think it's as good as The Descendants. The Descendants, it's one of those movies that I think is a really great movie that I would never want to watch again just because it is so depressing. The Way Back is one I would probably watch and repeat. And if I were to compare it to The Kings of Summer, which came out earlier this year, or Mud, I don't think it's as good as either of those two films, but it's really solid. And we're getting a lot of great coming of age movies that it was a genre that was kind of going away. But last year with something like Perks of the Wallflower, and this year with this, and there's also The Spectacular Now, which I haven't seen yet, but I've heard a lot of great things about. It's just some reason it's coming back in full force, and I enjoy it because I love that type of storytelling. So,
have either of you seen the movie Safety Not Guaranteed?
I have, yes.
No, I have not.
I really like that movie. I was just trying to think of something because I don't. Or did you write a review about it?
I didn't know. I watched it, but by the time I saw it, it was already out for a long time. But yeah, I do like. It does have a similar feel to that film, just with. But yeah. Anyways, you were saying.
No, I was just trying to think of a way to just to point people at other movies and stuff that were good, and I thought Safety Not Guaranteed was a movie that I watched this year that was good, and it's also available on Netflix. Watch Instant right now. So if you like time travel or anything like that, I mean, it's not explicitly time travel, It's more about the idea of time travel, but the premise of it is pretty good. Plus, it has Nick from New Girl in it.
Yeah, Jake Johnson, who I'm a huge fan of. Like, I love that guy so much. I find him hilarious. But yeah,
the movie I was. Oops, sorry. I was going to say the movie I was thinking of before I was on the wrong track because I was thinking of 10 Things I Hate About You, but that's Taming of the Shrew. It's not much ado about nothing.
I was going to bring that up too.
So my bad on that.
Yeah, so I would also recommend, if you haven't seen the Kings of Summer too, that I watched it a while ago, so I didn't get a chance to talk about that here. But I think the performances in that are a little stronger than the one here. The main performance, the kid who is in this, he's okay. He doesn't have much to do. His performance is, it does what he needs to do, but it's nothing outstanding. But I would definitely recommend seeing that along with the other films I recommended seeing earlier. But pretty much that's what we've been watching for this week. Anything else before we move on to our next segment?
Nope.
All right, we will go to a little break here, and then we'll come back and discuss the news that was for this past week.
Pixels in the Animation has wrapped on the Super Mario Bros. Super Show Now TV's Mr. Neil and TF2 and Mike head to Hyrule. That's right, listeners, from episode 16 through episode 20 of PETA, Pain in the Ass, we will be covering all 26 episodes of the Legend of Zelda cartoon. And we have a surprise guest co-host for this arc, Ender from Radio Free Cybertron. Excuse us, podcasters. You can catch Pixels in the Animation on www.geekcastradio.com and in iTunes.
Hey, excuse me, princess.
All right, and welcome back to MWIRE Weekly. To start off the news segment this week, we're just going to take a dive into this past weekend's box office and see what came up on top, what were the flops, and what are the trends going on right now. The biggest trend, of course, is that our main attraction for last week, Gravity, maintains the top spot again this week with a weekend gross of about $44 million, which is pretty incredible when you consider it's only a 20% change from last week. And it has, a total gross of over, $123 million just at this time, which I think has already surpassed its budget, which is to me is a great sign. And the fact that it's getting so much word of mouth, I think it's going to reign supreme for a few weekends to come.
I thought it was interesting that it held such an advantage over Captain Phillips. I thought there might be a little bit more, I thought Captain Phillips would have closed the gap a little bit, but it dominated it.
Well, I'm wondering how much of that is word of mouth, and like we talked about last week, where people went to see it despite the trailer, and they're going and showing people that may not have liked it because of the trailer that no, that's not what it is.
Yeah, we kind of said that might be something that happens with this movie, where you did have that huge influx of people originally, but there might have been some people steering clear that now that they've heard, they chose to see that on that second weekend. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I don't think anybody would have predicted anything besides those two being number 1 and 2. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs still, it's third week and it's still kind of holding way above all the other ones. Not a huge surprise because of animated movies and their longevity in the big screen, but I do find it interesting that the only film that was returning that had an increase over last week was Despicable Me 2. Had almost a 5% increase over last week, and that's its 15th week in the theater.
Yeah, I guess right now there's not a huge amount out there for families. Like, besides, if you've already seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, there's, if that's still playing, maybe you go see that again. Plus, with kids films, you get that a lot of return audience because kids love to see things of repeat viewing, unlike adults for the most part. But that is kind of
interesting
crazy.
Thing though is right next to it though is Monsters University. It was only Despicable Me is in its 15th week and Monsters is in its 17th. Despicable Me had a 5% increase in Monsters University, almost a 12.5% decrease.
Yeah, but and it's interesting that Despicable Me is still in more theaters right now than Monsters University, so it still has a more lasting appeal, I think. I think Monsters University just didn't grab kids. It doesn't have the Despicable Me 2 has the Minions and has I think can grab kids on Monsters University. It was more of the thing about that I think really hit the zeitgeist for kids, unlike that film.
What's the biggest disappointment this week, Dan?
I don't know if it's a disappointment per se, but Machete Kills made less than the original Machete and only came in about almost $4 million with $3.7 million this past weekend, which is actually a few million less than the original Machete, which came out actually in August. So that could also be a big factor to that. I I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily a disappointment, but I'm certain they would hope that would make more, because usually with a sequel, you're thinking your revenue is going to increase and not decrease. Another one, Runner drops down to 5th place this week, which was in 3rd last week. It made a little bit less than only about $40,000 less than Machete Kills with $3.7 million as well, but that has a total gross of $14 million, which is actually interesting.
Almost go ahead. I was just saying almost a 50% drop for Runner and for Rush.
Yeah, we just go back to Captain Phillips real quick. Though it came in 2nd place, it only made $26 million. It actually made more this weekend than Argo did, I believe, which came out around the same time. It's actually has a higher theater had a higher opening weekend than Argo. What one thing I do love though, seeing this box office, is the fact that 2 adult dramas are number 1 and number 2, and not only 2 adult dramas, but 2 adult really good movies are number 1 and number 2, and I think that's a good sign. I think that's a good sign of things to come. I love it when we see critically acclaimed films or films that I feel like are good movies doing well in the box office. Yes, they're not making Avengers money, but they're doing really well considering their fan base.
As far as budgets go, most of these films are making back their budget or far surpassing it. Rush, however, it's going to take about 2 months of it doing exactly what it did this weekend in order for it to get to its budget.
Is anyone looking forward to the Gravity 2 sequel?
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be
the one that takes place underwater.
I thought that was Avatar. But I think Rush is probably going to do really well overseas, just because IndyCar racing is such even bigger overseas than it is here. I can see that cleaning up. I don't know if it's been released overseas yet, but I think similar to like Pacific Rim, that is, I think, gets at to its subject matter is more appealing to different cultures. I think that's the case with Rush, but yeah. Anything else about the overall box office for this week? Nothing hugely surprising. I mean, besides Gravity reigning supreme again.
Yeah, not too much for me that I'm seeing that's jumping out at me. Kind of somewhat of a predictable. Besides how much Gravity was in the lead was the only thing that surprised me.
Yeah, and 3D ticket pricing probably it's a big factor for that. Though Captain Phillips was an IMAX too, so
was it really?
Yeah, I saw it in IMAX.
Oh, we didn't. We kept Gravity in the IMAX at my theater.
I was surprised. It was when I bought my tickets. I'm like, wait, this is an IMAX? Why is Gravity not still? They had Gravity in 3D, but they put Captain Phillips in, which I think was a mistake. Not because Captain Phillips is a bad movie, but just because IMAX is much more. I think that format fits Gravity a lot more than does Captain Phillips. From what it doesn't add as much.
Well, did they split? Did they split the times, or did they not have Gravity in IMAX anymore?
They just did not have it in IMAX.
Oh wow!
Anymore, so.
Okay.
But all right. Anything else before we can move on to the movie news for this week?
Nope. I'm pretty well set.
All right. Well, we'll pass the mic over to our in-house newsman Kevin Optimus Solo, and he'll take it away.
We got all kinds of geeky things in our headlines this week. Starting with a favorite geek topic here, Star Wars. A couple different Star Wars things hitting the news wires this week. First of all, there was one thing that broke news that there was going to be imminent title and casting news revealed very soon about the next installment on the Star Wars franchise. That was broken kind of early on in the week, that we were going to eventually see something on either the title of the movie or some confirmations on cast members. I haven't really seen anything yet, but there was an article that did rumor some possible titles for the next installment, and the 2 that were thrown out there, I'm not saying any of these are going to actually be the name, but they're the first 2 rumored titles for the film, and that's Rise of the Jedi and Return of the Sith. Obviously, those sound like we've heard them before, variations on titles that we have definitely heard before. Do either one of those titles resonate with you guys, or do you think that's just rumor mill fodder that's never going to come to fruition as far as those two titles go?
What I find interesting about the titles, it almost based on the titles, those titles seem like they would be two opposite movies. You know, Rise of the Jedi, Return of the Sith. It seems like they would just, I couldn't see them coexisting with one another. But
well, it's said that they both point to obviously the continued battle between the Jedi's and the Sith Lord. There is speculation that this movie is going to focus on Luke and Leia's children, so I don't know how those would kind of go into those. And the article kind of points out too that would kind of break the mold as far as the first titles of the films of the other two trilogies, because the other ones had more, titles based on the concepts with Phantom Menace and a New Hope, where it was the other ones that we had kind of these more generic names.
From what I can remember, right, or from what I've been hearing, I think Rise of the Jedi would make sense, as if it seems like they're going to get into that whole Jedi Academy and Luke trying to bring back the Jedis, but I don't know.
Well, if you think about it, though, if you go off of the original trilogy in episode 4, 5, and 6, I think either title does make sense, because you have Luke and everything destroying the Emperor and then destroying that part of it. So Return of the Sith would make sense, depending on how many years we're going in the future, that now they're going to finally make a comeback after this huge defeat that they've suffered in episode 6. And Rise of the Jedi would also make sense because, the Jedi had been kind of, scattered across the universe and in hiding and, not a big presence. So them rising up as a more of a united body like we saw in the episode 1, 2, and 3, I can see them both making sense. Like the Jedi rising up, but the Sith are going to come back and try to, take back what was once theirs.
Am I the only one that doesn't want the new trilogy to have anything to do with Luke, Leia, and Han?
Yes.
I kind of don't want there to be a new trilogy, honestly. I
do, only because that's the trilogy I wanted in the first place. I much would rather them do episodes 7, 8, and 9 instead of when they decided to do 1, 2, and 3. I more so wanted to see 7, 8, and 9. And it would have made more sense then because of the age of the actors could have played, it would have made more of a, it was 30 years after 20 to 30 years after they'd done the original film, so.
I mean, we never would have gotten Hayden Christensen.
I like everything I hear about what's going on with like the pre-production and stuff like that for the new trilogy. It's just whenever someone's like, oh, Mark Hamill's coming back, or Harrison Ford, I'm like, I don't, why? Like to me, like, don't get me wrong, I like 4, 5, and 6 just as much as everybody else does, and I like the last half of episode 2 and the first half of episode 3. Other than that, the rest of the prequel trilogy is garbage.
Oh, I love the last 45 minutes of episode 3.
Well, the only problem I have with episode 3 is after the halfway point. The way I kind of explain it to my friends and people that I talk about this with is that they sat down to watch dailies with George while this movie was being filmed. And they saw the first half of the movie and they're like, wow, this is really cool. Except none of it matches up with episode 4. And then the last half of that movie became, okay, now the ships have to change and this needs to happen and that needs to happen and everything else needs to happen. And so much stuff just happens so fast in the last half of that movie just so that it has the correct connective tissue to episode 4 that it just feels all wrong. Like, I felt like episode 2 should have been episode 1 and episode 3 should have been episode 2, and we should have gotten another entire episode with Darth Vader.
I could see that.
Just so the stuff had like the right pacing, because all of a sudden like the interiors of all the ships became like the interiors of all the ships for episode 4. Like they flipped a switch and now everything looked like episode 4. It was just
there's a fantastic YouTube video, a series of videos that this guy does, and I wish I could think of the YouTube user name right now, but he basically retells. He's like, this is how episode 1 should have been.
Is it oh my gosh, I know the guy. I know a guy that does it. It's what if episode 1 was good? Is that what you're talking
something
about?
like that. I mean, this one's not like, it's not, there is one out there that's like a huge like 80-90 minute type thing. This one's like, I want to say like
10 minutes,
maybe 10 to 20 minutes. And he had done the episode 1 version quite a long time ago.
Yep.
He just did episode 2 this year.
It's called Belated Media. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, and it's excellent. Like everything he says makes sense, and he hasn't done episode 3 yet.
No, but it basically the twist of what he was saying is that the entire prequel trilogy should have revolved around Obi-Wan and not Anakin,
Right.
and that the biggest mistake they ever made was killing off Darth Maul in the first episode.
Right.
And I watched these videos and I completely agree with everything that he's saying.
I was like, just give this guy the reins and let him run the franchise.
But no, I don't know. I'm excited for it. I mean, obviously I'll see them, but it's just I don't know because I liked the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff is like I feel like you can do other things with the Star Wars universe and they don't have to revolve around that core group of people and it can still be good. Like I really like the rumor that was Zack Snyder's Jedi movie that was kind of revolving like a Seventh Samurai type thing but with Jedi. Like I liked that rumor. Keep in mind the other thing is that there's supposed to be a Star Wars movie every year after episode 7 hits.
Every year or every other year, I think they were saying.
It's there's a numbered one every other year.
Oh, okay.
But there's a side story
gotcha.
On the off years, so we still have yet to hear anything about that stuff.
Not trying to go way off, but you mentioned the Clone Wars, and they did just reveal the first character image from the new Star Wars cartoon that's going to be debuting here, I believe, next year.
Rebels.
Interesting yeah, and they showed the main antagonist there. It was an interesting image, but that's not about movies. For those of you that are more of the classic fans and you don't want to hear too much about the new stuff, I found this interesting. I didn't know these existed, but I might want to pick them up and read about these. J.W. Rinsler apparently has written kind of behind the scenes books on the first or the original 2 Star Wars movies, New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and he just released his book on Return of the Jedi, kind of coinciding with the 30th anniversary. Apparently it's all kind of behind the scenes information and stuff you never knew. And just from the article I read, there was some interesting stuff. Talks about a complete rehaul of the ending that was done, which apparently originally was supposed to climax with the rebels taking over the Death Star and using it to destroy the Emperor's lair on some type of lava-laden planet. Weird how we got one of those later on. How producers wanted Han Solo to die, and how the Ewoks were basically not involved as much as we got to see them. Some weird behind the scenes stuff about dressing room ongoing-ons. I don't want to go into detail on that, just in case there's any kids listening. And just kind of interesting stuff. Other people that were interested in directing: Tony Scott, John Carpenter, David Lynch. Some high-profile actors who almost secured roles. So apparently Ben Kingsley was turned down for Emperor Palpatine. Apparently Alan Rickman was up for Admiral Jerjerrod. So it looks like there's a lot of interesting tidbits in this book, and I might have to check out the other 2 that he wrote. Any thoughts on that? Or am I the only Star Wars nerd amongst us?
No, I'm a Star Wars nerd. I just don't know. It's interesting, but I have a hard time getting into books.
Yeah.
I do like all the behind the scenes stuff. Like there was sorry to keep going off on the tangents, but I have the what was it when episode 1 or 4, 5, and 6 came out on DVD in like 2004.
Yeah.
There was a really cool, it's like a 90-minute behind the scenes documentary of like all things Star Wars.
Right.
That is completely absent from the Blu-ray edition of the movie. Like it's the one special feature they left out of the Blu-ray packaging.
I'm with you. I much would rather watch like documentaries or DVD features about kind of the behind the scenes stuff than read a book. I'm not against reading books, but
No. I'm not either. I'm just.
I would much rather see it in DVD form and actually hear the people and see the people talking about it and roundtable discussions and stuff like that. Dan, any thoughts on the Star Wars books?
I mean, it'd be interesting just to get that perspective, the I'm always for juicy gossip, I guess. I'm curious what the wardrobe stuff was. I'm guessing a lot of Leia slave costume stories.
Oh, more so dressing room stuff that was going on in people's dressing rooms and stuff like that.
There you go. I'm guessing most of those involve Han Solo himself. But I'd be interested in picking it up just to see. I do like movie history, and there are some movie books I really like. So I'm not a huge Star Wars nerd, but finding out some of the behind the scenes stuff is always kind of cool, since that behind the scenes of the Star Wars films is pretty legendary.
Yeah. All right, let's keep the geek trend going here. Apparently, a writer has just been hired to take over the helms of a new Masters of the Universe movie, being brought to us by Columbia apparently. And Terry Rossio, I don't know if I'm saying that name right, has been hired as the latest screenwriter to take a crack at the material. I don't know, a lot of people were probably used to hearing the name John Chu, who had been tied to this project for a while. I remember hearing about it quite a ways back. Apparently he no longer is involved, and now this other Terry Rossio is taking the helms here. So it might be something we're going to be seeing here in the next few years, possibly, if they get their stuff together. Do we need a Masters of the Universe movie?
I'm trying to figure out where the interest in this comes from. I mean, besides the obvious, guys our age, but like, is there even like a Masters of the Universe like cartoon right now? Like,
not currently, not since that 2002/3 cartoon.
That's why I'm interested in why this is coming about when there's nothing to go along with it.
I mean, they did it so perfectly the first time. Did they really need to make it again?
The first one is so bad it's good. That's the only reason that I'm somewhat interested, because I feel like they could actually make it nowadays and it would somewhat work. I think the interest is kind of like what we talked about last week. There's such an interest in the fantasy / supernatural genre, in any type of epic type film people are trying to grab onto, whether it be like what we talked about with Harry Potter and Twilight and the Hunger Games and all these different things. I know that's kind of a completely different audience they'd be talking to, but it seems like anything that's going to be bigger than life as far as movies people are trying to flock to and grab onto. So maybe this is just another one that they see they can do that and speak to the kids that are now grown up that were kids when this was popular. I don't know, but at least they could maybe do it more believable than the first one.
That's what I'm getting at, though. The three things that you a couple of things that you mentioned, which was Harry Potter, Twilight, Hunger Games, all of those stuff, they were like riding the wave of the book, or there's what I'm just saying is right now there's Masters of the Universe isn't even like in outside of like our demographic. It's not even like a thing right now.
Yeah,
like that's what I'm saying. Like, where's the momentum driving?
Well, I would assume it would have to be a whole project where they do the typical, we're gonna do a new cartoon, we're gonna do a new toy line and all this other nonsense, and it would be kind of like a throw all our eggs in one basket and hope it works.
They're gonna create the vehicle for this.
I mean,
I don't know.
You could look at they could probably look at the fact that Transformers is doing well. That's based upon an '80s cartoon. Obviously, that has cartoons going currently, but they also could see the Smurfs did amazingly well. That's based off an '80s cartoon, and movie studios are looking for anything that has any name recognition whatsoever.
Silverhawks.
I would much rather see that, actually. G.I. Joe had nothing going for it when the movie came out either, really.
Really? I thought it had like a couple there was a relaunch of the cartoon and stuff. After the show?
It was after the movie had already started. So that's what I'm saying. They might try to. I don't know if they're putting.
I guess
what's the phrase? The horse before the wagon.
But there's never stopped being G.I. Joe toys. No,
that's true.
And Transformers toys too. I mean, it's. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know the last time I actually went to the store and looked for a.
No, there's not. There hasn't been any. There's the classics line that's out, but nobody would know about that except for actual collectors and fandoms. You're not going to see it on the store shelf, and I think maybe that's why this project hasn't gone anywhere as of this point, because this rumor has been flying around for, as far as a Masters of the Universe movie, for at least 2 or 3 years, if not longer. I know there was a different version that was back in like mid 2000s. That was rumored, and then that kind of got killed, and this one started up, and it hasn't gone anywhere yet. So maybe your point is right on the dot there. That
I'm not trying to poo-poo Masters of the Universe. I'm pretty
no,
sure.
I'm just saying, but
I had like I said, I had all the toys when I was growing up, and I have no nostalgia for the old stuff. So I'm pretty sure if this thing ever happens, I will go and see it. It's just like I guess I try to play devil's advocate to some of this stuff, but like we could have a discussion about why is this showing up now. So
yeah, it does seem kind of interesting that this would kind of come out of nowhere as far as what's going on recently. But who knows? It seems more plausible, like they are doing, obviously, with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because there is the current cartoon going on. There are the toys on the shelves, so it makes more sense for that franchise to be going to the movie theater like it is, than what you're talking about, like with the Masters of the Universe. I think that's a good point. So, all right, another piece of news going on here. We talked about Gravity last week. There's some further reaction now that it's been so popular. Of course, with anything so popular, people are going to come out of the woodwork with their take on it, or their reviews, or their criticisms of it. Most recently, I saw an article about astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, if I'm saying that name right, who had some things that he was talking about. I didn't want to bring up his whole ordeal because I think he's a little bit off his rocker. But as far as some of the little nuances that he brings up, I thought it would be interesting to kind of point those out. Some things that he said was wrong with the film. He said, first of all, Sandra Bullock's character, a medical doctor, would never be asked to service a spacecraft. He also said that the Hubble Telescope, International Space Station, and Chinese Space Station would never be in each other's line of sight. He questioned why Sandra Bullock's hair didn't float away from her face as it would in actual zero gravity. Talked about the movement of space debris. He said it should have floated west to east instead of east to west. So he had a whole list of stuff that he was trying to point out that was wrong with the film. That being said, I still think the film did a pretty good job of getting a lot of stuff right that most other space films haven't, like we talked about last week with the sound and stuff like that. So I don't know, I just found it interesting to point that stuff out. It doesn't take away from my viewing of the movie. What about you, Dan?
Well, I actually really like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He has the podcast, the Star Talk, and he's a very intelligent, he knows way more about that stuff than I do. I don't have an issue with it. I think people misinterpreted what he was trying to do, because he's done similar things with other movies. Like he's talked about Titanic and how the stars in that are incorrect, and he does that a lot. I think more so because he likes to talk about science, and he's seeing something where he can begin this conversation. Like famously, he's the one that headed the movement to kind of degrade Pluto from no longer be considering a planet. But he's a really funny guy, and I think he's not being as nearly as serious as some of these articles are making them out to be. I think he just likes to kind of poke at things and find out interesting quirks about them, but it doesn't take away from things. I realize with dramatic licensing, you're going to change some stuff. You're not going to make everything correct. You could probably get a group of scientists and make everything as factual as possible, but it may also not be all that entertaining. I don't really watch the NASA channel. I don't know many people that actually do. I'm pretty sure watching people in space isn't interesting for a short amount of time, but I think when you actually come to a movie, there are certain licenses you take, certain concedences we're aware of, and I felt like I was watching something that really happened in space. Or should things be moving in different directions, or okay, maybe, but I think it's just kind of a much, going back to the beginning of the podcast, it's much ado about nothing, pretty much.
Yeah. the only tweet of his that kind of sat wrong with me was his one that said, why anyone is impressed with a zero-G film 45 years after being impressed with 2001: A Space Odyssey is a mystery. Putting those two movies in the same sentence bothers me. But
well, I fell asleep watching 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I do not like that at all.
I did not fall asleep watching Gravity, so that would be why I'm impressed.
Yeah,
but I mean,
I agree.
But then again, I was I'm impressed by the zero-G that was in Apollo 13. So what, whatever.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, if it wasn't popular, no one would be saying anything about it. It's because it's popular, so people are gonna.
Dan, don't you mean it's overrated?
Yeah.
I was trying not to use that word when we were talking about 2001. Anyway, Avatar. interesting news here. We might need to put some of these pictures in the post possibly, but apparently there is Disney reveals early look at Avatar theme park in Orlando. James Cameron's World of Pandora attraction will open in 2017. Um, Fantasy film will live on as a major attraction at the Animal Kingdom in Orlando, Florida. Some interesting pictures that kind of suggest what it might look like as you're walking through. Some epic nighttime lighting and imagery, spectacular, I guess, with music and floating things and water screens and all kinds of stuff as you're kind of going through this Pandora environment. I've never been to any of these theme parks because I live a sheltered life, I guess. But this, if I was in the area and this was something like this was open, I think I would make it a must that I go and check it out.
My first question is it in 3D?
Only if you have glasses.
You got to wear glasses through the entire part.
Looking at the pictures, it does look pretty cool. It's weird because I don't know many Avatar fans. Like, I get Harry Potter because that's a huge fandom, but I don't know many people longing for an Avatar theme park. Maybe it would be awesome to be there.
I think this is something different. Like, yeah, I get the Harry Potter stuff, but I think this is just more like a safari, just bringing you like kind of like you go to the Harry Potter stuff to be like immersed in the world and you see stuff that you know, right? Because they do that. They put like a subtle twist on things and there's stores that you can go in and stuff. But I think this is just like think of this more like a zoo.
And something that just like attacks all of your senses and just like an experience that you can't get anywhere else.
So
that's what it looks like to me. I don't know. And I'm sure, all of it will be, because when's the sequel supposed to come out?
Down the bottom of the article it says there's one in 2016, 2017, and 2018.
So this opening right in the middle of that, whether there's a fandom or not.
Who wants a sequel?
James Cameron.
What event in United States history are they gonna take off the net? Anyway, we'll save our Avatar discussion for another week. Moving along with the headlines, we're talking about Michael Bay in the opening teaser here. Michael Bay wanting to direct a horror film. Apparently, that is his fantasy to direct his own self-financed horror movie. I'm not a huge Michael Bay fan, but that might be something that works with him. I mean, well, Dan, how do you think Michael Bay and horror mesh?
Well, I mean, his production company has been in charge of a lot of the remakes of the recent horror films, like the Friday the 13th remake, and they have all been awful, really bad, from what I can remember. It's just weird. I mean, that if he wants to more power
compared to Michael Bay's other films,
I would say, well, yeah, even worse than that. Like the acting and it's just they're just so cheaply. They're made by people who I think just didn't understand it. He didn't direct it, so they can't blame him for it. It was just his production company. But it's just weird because his filmmaking is so bombastic and so obviously huge, and horror films are the opposite of that. Hey, more power to him if he wants to try new stuff. He won't be able to rely on most of his tired techniques, but what he's mostly known for. So if he wants to tackle something like that, good luck to him. I'd be interested in seeing it just to see what exactly he could create. Maybe he's good. Maybe he'd be a good horror director. Who knows? But I don't know. It surprises me somewhat. I don't see it working, but you never know. Maybe it could work.
Was Pain and Gain good?
It was actually. You know what? I enjoyed it. It was a really dark comedy, more so than I anticipated. But I don't think it was like on the level of like a Bad Boys, but like Mark Wahlberg was kind of a dud in that. But The Rock was hilarious. He was like the best part of that entire movie, and it kind of gets crazy near the end. But I did enjoy that more than I thought I would.
I've been wanting to see it. I don't know. I like Michael Bay. I mean, I guess it's because I've just always known what I was going to get with him. I never expected anything more than spectacle from his movies. So it's kind of like if he does anything that, the way I feel is like if he does anything that even gets me to emote a little bit, then he's done something extraordinary. Like for him, right. He has done something extraordinary, because otherwise I just expect flash and spectacle. Which is one of the reasons why I was never disappointed by the Transformers movies outside of the second one. And I'm a huge Bad Boys fan. I even like the second one up to a point. But I'm hoping like the rumors of Bad Boys 3 are true. But I don't know. I like horror movies. I really do. I can't stand like horror video games or anything like that. But I can watch a horror movie as long as, you know, like I said with the Prisoners thing, that there's no flashlights or mirrors. I can handle them pretty well. So
Yeah, depending on what, you know, I guess you say horror film, and there's so many different types of horror films. So I'd find it interesting to see what way he would go.
The one where stuff explodes.
Well, obviously there's going to be something like that, but
Optimus Solo with a Jason mask. Not Optimus Prime.
Yeah. Kind of staying in the now here with a movie that's soon to be hitting the screens. There's a news article that came out this last week about The Fifth Estate, the controversial film about WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. I'm saying every name wrong probably today.
I think that's right, actually.
Apparently the film has a major hater, and it's Assange himself. Apparently he wrote a letter to Cumberbatch explaining why. I don't know why this is. I guess this news story is just breaking now because of the movie coming out soon, because it says the letter's from January. And in it he says to Cumberbatch, "I believe you're a good person, but I do not believe that this film is a good film. I believe that it's going to be overwhelmingly negative for me and the people I care about. It is based on a deceitful book by someone who has a vendetta against me and my organization."
Julian Assange is a crazy person. If there's actually a documentary that came out earlier this year about him, which is interesting, that the Fifth Estate's coming out too, called WikiLeaks: We Steal Secrets, and it kind of gets into his life, and it's pretty evident that he started out with good intentions and then went crazy. So I'm not surprised that he thinks his movie is out to destroy him. But
yeah, I don't know. To me, it seems like every film that comes out about something based on true life has somebody that's involved with something that comes out against it. Seems to be a trend this year, especially with Jobs, now with the Fifth Estate, and even with our main attraction today, Captain Phillips. Anything based on real life, somebody that was involved in that story who has a different viewpoint seems to be trying to make the most of it, or at least coming into the public's eye and trying to grab some attention. Whether they're right or wrong, I'm not saying they're all wrong, but it seems to be a weird trend this year.
I think too, people go searching for them, and then they get these stories. Like you mentioned, this is from January, and now they're kind of re-releasing it with a film coming out. And I doubt the film minds it. I think the film, the people who made it probably love it because it's free publicity for them. And the more he talks about how much he hates it, the better it is. But because it's interesting, like he's actually stuck in an embassy right now. He's been stuck there for, I don't know, maybe over a year or so. So he I don't know if he could even see the movie because he can't get to a movie theater. I don't know, maybe they'll send him a screener.
All right, Michael, any thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, I don't really, I know what was going on. I don't know much about him. The thing with me and news and politics is that I try to stay away from stuff that I either know next to nothing about, or I don't feel directly involves me. Like I know of, WikiLeaks because, it spread all over Twitter and stuff like that. And, I know like who he is, but I don't know like where he went or what kind of person he is. I haven't really watched anything about it or anything like that. But I do want to see this movie because I do like seeing those things. Like one of my favorite movies from a few years ago is The Social Network. And, as overblown or not as that movie may or may not be, I really enjoy that movie just as a movie. So I mean, I'm not saying the Fifth Estate's going to be the same thing because I don't think Bill Condon's the same thing as Fincher. But
right.
Whatever. I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about it.
For sure. And the last headline for today, here we go. Coming soon, possibly in 2016. Should have known this was coming. Angry Birds movie.
Can someone explain to me the appeal of Angry Birds?
I've never played it, so I don't know.
I've never played it either.
I just thought it notable to bring up as far as the people that were that kind of tapped to direct Fergal Riley and Clay Cadis. Riley was a storyboard artist on Hotel Transylvania, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and Spider-Man 2, but this will be his first directing gig. And Cadis will also be his first directing gig. He was a animator on Frozen, Wreck-It Ralph, and animation supervisor on Tangled. So they definitely got some guys that have some experience with animation, but who haven't directed before. But yeah, I can't explain the fad. Maybe Dan?
I mean, I've played the game. I haven't, I'm not like addicted to it. I do find it fun. I got to a point, like, once you kind of go through it and beat it, it's kind of like, not Tetris, but it is interesting, like a nice little puzzle figuring out how to get all the different eggs or whatever. And the physics are kind of cool, but I don't, why is it such a huge sensation? I don't know. Maybe people have bad up hatred towards birds and this lets them release it, but I don't, besides that, I don't know. It's kind of cool. I mean, it's a fun game. I do give it that. It does get really addicting, but it's just, I mean, maybe that's the reason. Simple.
Will the sequel to Angry Birds just be like Candy Crush or something?
Well, there has already been an Angry Birds 2, I think.
No, I meant movie-wise.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe that or Farmville. So
can you imagine a Candy Crush? Excuse me, a Candy Crush movie where you just 20 minutes in you have to leave because you can't continue the movie.
You got to check in every 5 minutes and help get your Facebook friends to help you.
Right.
Help me through this movie, please.
It won't continue unless you come and watch it with me. What a ploy. All right, so that does it for the headlines. Moving on to some quick casting calls. Not a lot for you here in this section, but a couple things here. I don't really know this actor a lot because I don't watch what he's in currently.
But you've seen Pacific Rim.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I do know who he is then. I wasn't thinking. But Charlie Hunnam apparently has dropped out of 50 Shades of Grey. The only reason I bring it up is because it was such a big deal when they dropped the casting names for this film, and it made headlines so many places, and you couldn't go anywhere without hearing about it. And now, less than a month later, it seems like he's dropped out. So apparently they're going to have to find a new main male star for that film. I don't know. It seems like it's going to be a successful movie to me. Like, I hear the craze that was the book, and it seems like the movie should be a financial success. So, is it the smartest thing to opt out of that? Well, maybe if you care more about art than money.
I think it's the material.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying it has to be that, because it seems like it's going to be a for sure moneymaker, but so maybe I give him more credit for not liking the material possibly and getting out. I don't have a lot to say about that. Go ahead.
And sometimes a success like that can work, against you. Think of people who were in Twilight who will always be associated with Twilight. And I think Charlie Hunnam, I think a lot of it had to do with his schedule and his TV show. And I think he realizes his TV show is probably better for his career than that movie because he would always be associated with that role. And if that movie didn't do well, if it did well, it wouldn't be because of him. And if it didn't do well, people would blame him for it. So it's kind of like the, what's his name that was in John Carter in Battleship?
Taylor Kitsch.
Taylor Kitsch, who was thrown into fandom to these blockbusters maybe too soon, and when it didn't work out, he was kind of looked like as a dud. And maybe Charlie Hunnam, Pacific Rim wasn't a disaster, but I don't think it was as successful as a lot of people wanted it to be. So maybe he's just like, you know what, I'll go a different route. So plus people are like killing him for being casted, I think equal to Ben Affleck. So I don't know.
True. The next casting call I had to bring up just because it's so fun to read and to talk about. You teased it in the opening. Apparently Vanilla Ice wants a role in Michael Bay's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I have to read this word for word. I hate reading stuff on air, but this cracks me up, this whole line. While chatting with the rapper about his new TV show entitled Vanilla Ice Goes Amish. I didn't even know that.
Oh, Lord.
Apparently he was ecstatic about the upcoming 2014 Michael Bay Turtles movie. And when asked if he'd like a role or cameo in the new film, apparently he jumped out of his chair and said, "Hell yes. Secret of the Ooze is the highlight of my life, and I'll never top it."
Wow, I'm sure I've had higher points in my life than that.
He said he would do anything, even if it was a walk-on. Quote unquote, we could do a remake of the Ninja Rap, this time with dubstep or even a role without rapping anything. He said this is going to be huge. I just had to read that for pure entertainment value.
This is the first thing I've heard about this movie that I don't like.
Maybe he'll be a gopher and he'll get coffee or something.
All right, real quickly, casting call, a trio of Harrison Ford rumors. I just want to get your take on each one of them quickly. Apparently, he is saying that he's not so sure about appearing in the next Star Wars, that he would love to do another Indiana Jones film, and he is in talks about appearing in the Blade Runner sequel. Which ones should he be in? Which ones shouldn't he be in? Or should we even be talking about Harrison Ford, Dan?
To me, the headline is Harrison Ford wants a job.
But he says he's not so sure about being in Star Wars.
I think he's playing hard to get. I think if anything, Star Wars, yes. No Indiana Jones movies. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, search for, the nursing home? Like, I don't understand. Blade Runner's appearance, to me, that if he's in the Blade Runner sequel, if there is one, it would kind of ruin the mystery of his character in the original. So I would be against that. But I think him in Star Wars is fine because if the movie does, move forward in time, him being older works. But Indiana Jones, leave it where it is. I don't need another Indiana Jones movie. I'm fine with the 3, because there's only been 3. I'm fine with the 3.
And apparently, Ridley Scott, who's going to be directing, I believe, the Blade Runner sequel, I remember hearing that he had shot down any option for Harrison Ford to do it, but apparently they're in talks now, so I don't know how he would fit into that one. Like you said, I am fine with him being in Star Wars, depending on how they do it. The other ones, though, I don't need him to be involved with. Michael?
Indiana Jones has never been a thing for me. I have seen all 3 movies. And I'm not saying that they're bad by any means. They just don't do anything for me. Like I feel like when you're a kid, or at least when we were kids, and you're being shown certain things by like friends or family members, that's like your gateway into things, and that's like the first fork in the road in terms of what you may like or not like when you're older. And in my family, it was Star Wars. My dad showed me Star Wars. They did not show me Indiana Jones. I have other friends that were shown both, so that they liked both. But for me, it was always Star Wars. So Indiana Jones has never done anything for me. I do agree that the 4th movie was actually bad. As far as Star Wars, we talked about it earlier. I don't. If he's not in Star Wars, it's not going to be a loss to me. I'd actually prefer that they tell some other story. There are other more interesting characters in the Star Wars universe than Luke, Leia, and Han.
I think with that, though, I understand what you're saying, but I think there's no way not to some way either acknowledge them or have them quickly in at least this first one that comes out.
That's fine.
If they're planning on doing a lot of them, I think they have to just make the nod, get it out of the way, do it in the first one, and then possibly then we're done with it.
That's fine, I guess. As long as it's like they're not. I don't want them to be. Okay, this is kind of what I'm hoping for, but at the same time not, and I'm hoping people can figure out what I'm talking about this. If they take like the Leonard Nimoy role that he had in the last 2 Star Trek movies, okay, I get that. But at the same time, I don't want them to be as bad as the Leonard Nimoy role in the last 2 Star Trek movies.
Right.
As far as the Blade Runner stuff, I've watched Blade Runner, and I feel like I've watched a different movie than everybody else. And every time I see like scenes from like someone shows like a screenshot, or I see like a short video from Blade Runner, I'm like, what? Where was that? Where was this in that movie that I watched? Is it like the director's cut? Is it the unedited cut? Is it like what cut of the movie is this that I'm being shown this picture from? Because that's not in the movie that I watched. So maybe I should watch that again. I mean, I'm not saying it's like, and I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that.
You can watch it for next week.
Yeah, well, okay. Maybe I can try and find one of the dozen ways to watch that movie.
If you're gonna rewatch it, I would say rewatch the director's cut. Is usually the universally looked at as the best version of it.
Okay. But like I said, I just I didn't have a problem with it when I watched it, but at the same time when it was done, I was kind of like, why? I understand what it's. I'm this way with a lot of video games. I understand what certain video games have done for the medium, and I can understand what Blade Runner has done for the medium, but at the same time, I was just like, this is not as good as everyone. I don't think it's as good as everyone thinks it is. But it was. I didn't think it was bad. Maybe I do just need to rewatch it because I just don't remember the movie that everybody else does.
And the final two casting call things, I guess Mike and some of the other people will be appreciative of this, that I'm not ignoring comic book stuff here. Some casting call rumors as far as 20th Century Fox's Fantastic Four reboot, which is scheduled to be released March 6th, 2015. Some names are starting to float around as far as who could be in the running to play Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. And the names that were thrown out there, Kit Harington from Game of Thrones, Jack O'Connell from 300 Rise of an Empire, and Miles Teller from The Spectacular Now apparently are being considered for Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. And Kate Mara from House of Cards, and I don't know how to say the other girl's name. It's S. Let's go ahead.
I know who you're. I don't know how to say her name either.
Something Ronan.
But she also read. I think didn't she also just read for Star Wars?
Yeah, she was. She apparently auditioned for or read for a Star Wars casting call, but now she's also being thrown out there as far as one of the possibilities for Sue Storm or the Invisible Woman. And apparently, Fruitvale Station star Michael B. Jordan is the studio's first choice to play Johnny Storm / the Human Torch.
I am. Okay, on their own, I have no problem with the actors that they've been that are listed here in this article. I feel like it's more in line with the Fantastic Four that I wanted out of the first two movies. With the younger characters, it seems more like they're going with the Ultimate Fantastic Four, which is my favorite Fantastic Four. They're all under 18. They work at a think tank, which is the Baxter Building, and it's just it's really cool. Like the oldest one is in that series is Grimm, the Thing, and I think he's like 21 or something like that, and everyone else is under 18. But I have no problem with any of the names that they've listed here. The only problem I have is with the fact that the Human Torch, Johnny Storm and Sue Storm, are supposed to be brother and sister. And I'm not sure the politically correct way to say this, but they don't have an African American female listed to play Suzanne Storm. Unless they're gonna go with like some kind of like adoptive kid or anything like that, or they're completely throwing it out the window and they're none of them are related to each other.
My guess is they maybe would go the adopted route. But yeah, that was one question I had. The casting to me seems legitimate. I think like Michael B. Jordan would make an awesome Human Torch. He worked with the director previously in Chronicle, and he had like a similar role in that. So I think his personality would work well, and he kind of has some experience doing like a superhero-esque movie previously. I think that's probably gonna, like you said, just the political aspect of it might rub some fans the wrong way because they are changing the race of a character.
Yeah, get over yourselves, people.
To me it doesn't matter because I get it if you change the race of a character like the Black Panther because race is a huge deal with that character, but with Johnny Storm it's never really been an issue. Like, did people complain? I know people complain that Jessica Alba was Sue Storm because she's not a great actress, but did people complain because her race didn't meet that character? I don't remember people saying anything about it. I don't know. Like I'm fine with all that casting. Saoirse Ronan or whatever. I'm a huge fan of her. She was great in Hannah. Her work, if they're doing the under 18 thing, I actually never read the Ultimates. I had no idea that they were under the age of 18 because I was kind of like hearing that cast. I'm like, these people seem really young to be playing these characters. But
yeah, that's one of the neat things about them is that they're all really young. So
that's kind of interesting, and that has me a little bit more intrigued because the Fantastic Four have always been that team that has not that they haven't aged well, but they are very much a product of their time period when they came out. So changing the age around, maybe that'll work because if you can't do, I didn't hate the old Fantastic Four movies, but you could do much better.
And the last casting call, another superhero type rumor. Now, let me first state that the source that this is all based on is unnamed, so take everything with a grain of salt. But the headline reads, Ben Affleck wants Larry David to be in the Man of Steel sequel. At first I was like, what in the heck are they talking about? And who in the heck would he play? And then once I read the article, I was like, that makes absolute perfect sense. So apparently Ben Affleck is reportedly trying to convince him to take a part in this, and the rumored name is Michael, you can say his name better than I can, because I don't.
It's Mixel Pitlick.
Yeah. Which he does look exactly like
him. I only know this character from Smallville.
Mm-hmm.
I like that character in Smallville, but more importantly, this introduces the idea of magic into the DC universe.
Is that good or bad in your eyes?
Good, I guess. I mean, if they can pull the problem is it's like Marvel did it, and then they kind of shied away with it with Iron Man 3, and it's they kind of, unless it's like the Avengers, magic doesn't exist, or if it's not Thor or the Avengers, magic doesn't exist. And it's kind of interesting going with the whole real world aspect that they kind of like. There's a definite tone to Man of Steel, and I did like Man of Steel quite a bit. But it didn't seem like a movie where magic, or didn't seem like a place where magic could exist. But if they're willing to put that in there, then I'm willing to watch it.
I just think he's perfect. If they were trying to put that character in, he is a perfect choice.
What else has he done? Because I don't know. I feel like I should know who this guy is.
The Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yep, don't know him.
Okay. You never watched Curb Your Enthusiasm?
No, I have not.
Have you watched Seinfeld?
Nope.
Okay. He also did.
Were you alive in the last 15 years?
Okay, listen. I didn't watch Seinfeld because, one, I didn't watch a whole lot of TV when I was in like elementary, middle, high school. I didn't watch a whole lot of TV. Okay. TV wasn't a thing for me until like 2004, and that's when I started paying attention to seasons and all that stuff. As far as Curb Your Enthusiasm, again, didn't have premium cable, and I haven't gone back and like really watched any of the older stuff, so I can't offer an opinion on either of those things.
He came out with a HBO movie, like Clean History, that came out this year. So if you want some idea of what he's like, because that movie is very much like in the vein of Curb Your Enthusiasm, you can watch that if you have HBO Go. But
I do. What is it called?
Clean History.
Clean History. I'll check that out this week.
He has John Hamm stars. He's like this guy who develops this car and things go wrong, and it's kind of it's an okay movie. It's it's for a TV movie. You can do worse.
All
right, so that does it for the casting call. The only other stuff we have in our news segment is just a brief, quick talk about some of the new trailers that were unveiled this last week. There was a new Monuments Men trailer, American Hustle trailer, and Secret Life of Walter Mitty trailer. Dan, did you see any of those, and do you have any thoughts on those?
I actually saw them all. The new American Hustle trailer, there really wasn't much different with that one with the other one. I am super excited for that movie. It looks like David O. Russell doing a Martin Scorsese movie, which I'm all for. I wasn't too hot on the new Monuments Men trailer. I was really anticipating the movie. I still am, just because it lacked the humor of the first one that I was hoping there would be more of. So I'm hoping the movie is more like the first trailer than the last one. Just something about it seemed a little too self-important. And Secret Life of Walter Mitty, that first trailer I thought was pretty remarkable, just in how it was edited and the lack of any real dialogue. And I was curious if that would be something that could sustain throughout an entire film. With the new trailer, it's more, gives you a better idea what the movie's going to be like. But I'm interested in that movie. I will say the thing about Secret Life of Walter Mitty, it is very original. The visuals are pretty fantastic. So I'm actually looking forward to all three of those movies, surprisingly enough.
I'm looking forward to all three, but all three trailers had different effects for me. American Hustle, the trailer for that didn't have an effect one way or the other for me. For me, it wasn't different enough from any of the other trailers, so it didn't sway my opinion one way or the other. I'm still interested in seeing the movie. It just had no effect on it. I was much more interested and intrigued by the first trailer for Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This other trailer almost brought it down a level for me.
I could see that.
So I'm still kind of on the fence there, but I'm still interested in seeing it. I had the opposite effect with the Monuments Men trailer. I actually am more excited about it now, and the reason being is the first trailer I didn't get a good sense of the importance or the amount of time or how big the roles were going to be for all the actors. And for me, the first trailer made it seem like it was maybe going to just focus on one or two of them, where the other people were playing more of just like little bit smaller roles. Whereas the second trailer really shows that you're going to get a good dose of all of them: John Goodman, Bill Murray, Matt Damon, George Clooney, etc. And I don't know. I like some of the things that second trailer shows, as far as making it seem a little more real and a little less. Because that first trailer almost for me had a feel, and I know these are completely different movies, but it almost had the feel of what was the Tarantino movie, not from last year but the year before?
Inglourious Bastards?
Yeah, it almost had just a slight touch of that in there with that first trailer. Like it was, yes, it's in a historical setting, but a little unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of people nicknaming it Ocean's Bastards because it's like combining Ocean's 11 with.
Yep, I was gonna say it reminded me of Ocean's 11.
But this second trailer for me made it seem more like it's more realistic. It's more has more basis in real life, and not so much of just this fantastical adventure type thing. But maybe that's just me. Mike, what did you feel about some of those trailers?
I have to agree with what you guys said about all of them. Monuments Men. I haven't seen the new one. Sorry guys, I saw the original one for the first time today. And it I mean, like I just said, it looks like Ocean's 11, 12, or 13. Maybe because it's like George Clooney and Matt Damon, but there's a very similar scene. It's even in the trailer where they're kind of discussing how many people they need for the job, and they're like, "We need." And it's actually, I think it's the same. I think it's the same two guys. No, it was because it was Brad Pitt and George Clooney had the conversation where they're like, "We need 5 people," and then he's like, "You'd be better if we had 6, wouldn't we?" Okay, we'll get 6. Like that line, that exchange is in one of the Ocean's movies, and I think it's the first one. American Hustle looked really colorful, and I do like the cast. And Secret Life of Walter Mitty, I haven't seen the second trailer. Apologize for that. I did like the first one, but what it sounds like with you guys, as far as the trailer goes, it sounds like the kind of issue that I had with Pacific Rim, or kind of the marketing behind Pacific Rim, where the first couple trailers were, giant robots bashing things up, and there wasn't a human element to it, so there wasn't like the geeks were latching on to the movie really well, but it wasn't playing very well for the wider audience. And right before, like a week or two before that movie came out, they released a final trailer that had a lot more of the human element to it, and it didn't play well with me.
See, for me, the first trailer for Secret Life of Walter Mitty had the same effect as the trailers did for Life of Pi, where it just seemed like this completely, like a fantastical experience with visual, unusual and unique visual type things that they're doing with it, and just kind of this unique thing that I'd never seen before. That's kind of like what I saw with the first trailer. And then the second trailer for me was just way too it was like, for me, it was distance itself from that.
Right. It looks a little more conventional than I anticipated.
Right. I didn't have this written down or anything, and maybe it's been released a long time ago, but in seeing our main attraction, which I saw today in the theater, one of the previews was for The Book Thief. And I remember when we did our look ahead at the fall and winter movies that trailer wasn't available, and I must have missed when it got released. So I just saw that for the first time this week, so I thought I'd bring it up. That looks pretty amazing from what I saw in the trailer with that, with the casting and just kind of how they're setting that up. So I'm definitely interested in that. Dan, have you seen that trailer?
I did. The one that's like gets into again, it's World War II during the Nazi takeover. I think it
was weird because they played it right after they played the Monuments Men trailer.
Yeah, I couldn't. My trailer didn't have a release date, or if it like even a year to it. So I'm assuming it's this year, but I don't know.
So any other trailer talk that you guys want to bring up? Anything that you saw for the first time this week or recently that piqued your interest?
I don't have anything.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, then I'll swing it back to you, Dan.
All right, well, we will take a little bit of break here, and we come back. We'll be entering into our main attraction with a discussion of Captain Phillips.
We are an unarmed freighter.
We have a potential piracy situation.
Chances are it's just fishermen.
They're not here to fish.
Look at me. I'm the captain now.
I want $10 million.
Don't get in there! We gotta get him off the ship!
We're deploying a SEAL team.
The Navy is not going to let you win. They would rather sink this boat.
Captain Phillips, can you hear me? Captain Phillips, can you hear me?
Rated PG-13.
All right, and welcome back. We are going to be entering into our main attraction this week, and our main attraction is Paul Greengrass's latest film, Captain Phillips. Like I mentioned, directed by Paul Greengrass, starring Tom Hanks, among a relative no-name cast. Writers Billy Ray, who wrote the screenplay, and it's based off of the novel of done by Richard Phillips, the actual real-life Captain Phillips. Going into this, way back when we did the preview for the movies of the fall winter preview in MWIRE a few months ago, this was actually my number one anticipated film for the year, for the second half of the year. So I was highly anticipating this movie, and usually with being highly anticipating a movie, disappointment often comes just because you build things up so high. Those, where you build them is impossible to meet. So I'm curious, Kevin, like how much you anticipated this. Was this a movie you're really looking forward to? Was it one that you just you went into with, mediocre expectations, or where did you stand at before as you were entering into the film?
I was definitely, I guess I should say exactly what I said to my friend who I was watching to it right before the film started, because we see a lot of the movies I see with him. Just because that's kind of our thing that we do together. And I leaned over and said, this has potential top 10 of the year written all over it. We'll see. So I kind of had high expectations for it. As far as how much I was looking forward to it, though, it wasn't by any means like one of the top 5 films I was looking forward to this fall and winter season. There was a lot of other films that I'm looking forward to even more. And that's why since I wasn't looking forward to it as much, I thought it might be one of those that just kind of comes in and steals the thunder, so to speak, as far as, my favorite films of the year. So it was I had high expectations, but it wasn't like I was having high expectations because I was super excited about it. I just thought it might be really good. So that's kind of how I entered it.
Okay. Yeah, part of me, just Paul Greengrass returning to like a docu-drama type of film, like what he did with the United 93, and I love his Bourne films, both Ultimatum and Supremacy. Green Zone is a movie I'm not a huge fan of, but him the idea of Paul Greengrass taking the reins of a real-life story and doing it his own way, I was really curious about and seeing how he would handle that. And I must say, like, after seeing Gravity last week and Captain Phillips this week, I just think this is one of the best back-to-back weeks for movies in my recent memory. I loved Captain Phillips. It met my expectations. Will it be my favorite film for the year or top 10? I mean, too early to say for sure, but it is one of my favorite films of the year so far. I think I was even more tense and more enthralled with this than Gravity. Not saying it's a better movie. It's a cliche to say edge of your seat, but I was so into it from right when like the game between the pirates and Captain Phillips begins until the very end. And I knew the actual outcome. I knew the story. I knew what was going to happen, but it didn't matter. Similar with United 93, he gets you invested. There's a certain sense of realism with what he does that makes you forget that you're watching a movie. Even when you have someone like Tom Hanks who gives a great performance, fantastic. It doesn't matter, and it just feels like you are experiencing the movie in real time. Like you are there with Captain Phillips in this movie, and it was intense. Does not describe it. I absolutely loved Captain Phillips. How about you?
Well, I just before we go too much further, just in case people are worried, maybe some people didn't catch our first episode of MWIRE Weekly. We will do this entire discussion spoiler free as much as possible. Granted, this is based on actual events, so so some people probably already know, like you said, they know what's going to happen. But we will try to keep it spoiler free for the most part. I kind of have a love hate relationship with this one. Hate's too strong a word. I have a love-like relationship with this film. I agree with your statement that it's intense. I agree with the statement that it does have a way, in the way that it's filmed and the way that the story is told, that it makes you feel like you're there experiencing it alongside them. And I think that's one of the big strengths of the movie. I think another big strength of the movie is the acting performances across the board. There was literally not... I don't know if I can come up with one person who stood out as kind of the sore thumb acting-wise. I really was convinced by all the acting jobs. And, you know, like you said, a lot of no-name individuals that I thought did an impressive job. Tom Hanks did a very impressive job. Although he fluctuated a little bit with his accent in the opening scene compared to the rest of the movie. But that's just me being nitpicky on some of the accents that he uses throughout his career, I guess. His character was not consistent in the way he spoke from beginning to end. But he still did a remarkable job acting-wise. My only issue with the film, I think from a character development standpoint, and I think that might have been a conscious choice by Greengrass, etc., to not do this, and to give it more of just this realistic, like you're partaking in the events and you're seeing things. So they really don't have very many moments that you really get to delve into some of the characters and some of what makes them act the way that they do. You're more so just experiencing it and kind of have to form your own ideas about why they're the way they are, because there's very little look at anything outside of this event. So, I mean, like I said, it was probably a choice for them to do it like this to be effective, but in doing so, there's not as much character development as some people might want to see. I can see that being a complaint from some people if they're searching for something to be critical about.
See, I would...
Go ahead.
So when you say character development, are you talking about the characters in general, like Tom Hanks and the hijackers, or...?
I am not talking about Tom Hanks. I think that is one person that they do have quite a bit of character development in, and I know he's the main character and all that. I just felt like the individual hijackers, it's there, but it's not as much as... I'm not saying I'm hugely upset about it, but I'm saying I could see some people criticizing that. The crew gets virtually no character development. But like I said, did they need some, or is this more so we're just telling this story in the perspective of this is the event and this is what happens, and this is as if you were right there alongside and you're observing and you're seeing things. We're not going to tell you that much about anything going on outside, before, after. Just experience the event. There is some kudos that could be given to just do that, I guess, if that is your purpose. You know what I mean? I think you know what I mean? I mean, if that was his choice, he did that and he did that effectively. But I know some people like to see a little bit more about what makes these characters tick, some of the nuances behind them, some things that might inform their decisions that they make, that type of thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but I can see that as kind of one gripe. My only other thing that I kind of could come up with was I thought some of the acts, especially towards the beginning of the film, were almost too quick. And what I mean by that is I would have liked certain acts to be prolonged a little bit, to experience more of what happened during that section of the movie.
Regarding like the crew not having a lot of backstory, I don't know how you would, if giving them backstory would really do much of anything. I think it was more about seeing them within their actions. If you were to compare it to United 93, that didn't give you much about who they were beyond this moment. And I think that is effective, and you just kind of learn who they are through their actions per se. I don't understand giving the crew backstory. I don't know if that would really add anything to the film. If you were to look at the hijackers, I can understand that a little bit, because you do get some in the beginning as like a little bit of a sneak peek into the life of these pirates, and like an understanding of what they do and why they do what they do. I could understand like wanting to see more of that and having a better idea of what's really driving them to do and become these pirates, and maybe getting into more of the political aspect. It touches on little things here and there. It mentions things in dialogue, and it doesn't really delve really deep into those issues. And I could see wanting to go even further with that. Yeah, I can understand that, but for me, going into it, I like that it was isolated into this one specific time, and in how you do the little bit of, for me, the little bit of backstory that we get was all we really needed. Like the juxtaposition between seeing Tom Hanks and like beginning him kind of going on his journey compared to that of the hijackers and going on to theirs. Yeah, I just getting that small glimpse into the pirate lifestyle. I would want more. I mean, I would love to even see like a documentary on the Somali pirates and what goes into it all, because some of it was a little bit confusing, like why they use different ships and where different ships come from. Like you do learn out later on as the story progresses, but I do think there is some development there with at least the main the main captain of the hijackers. The other hijackers besides him, the main with what I think his name was Muse, or I forget.
Yeah, that's the main one.
The other ones, I could see people complaining that were very stereotypical. You had the young kid who, was trying to make a name for himself and maybe was way over his head. You had that hothead, that factor that you didn't know what he was gonna do, because he would jump, he would jump the gun too early, or he would go crazy. Like those characters were a little too on the like stereotypical. I mean, they might be 100% factual. That's the issue. It's like, yeah, they may sometimes being factual. You can in some ways become, you can run into issues just being that. But I could see issues with that because those characters were kind of thin. But I did like that relationship and the development that does go into that of Captain Phillips and the Muse, the head not terrorist but a pirate, and the back and forth between those two characters, and how I don't necessarily think I think you do sympathize with their plight of the hijackers, and have it for the small glimpse you do see, you can kind of get an understanding of what they're doing beyond them just being evil people. And it does kind of put a little bit of a deeper understanding into their motivations. Maybe it could have gone further. Sure, I mean, you kind of think he has a family life. You really don't know. There's one great line in it where it's like Tom makes his character saying like you're not fishermen, because that's the thing, is like they're just fishermen, but because of their situation, they were driven to this. So that's that thing. Are we causing this issue, or are they just kind of stuck into a hard place and they have no other option? But yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Well, I agree that you couldn't get too much more into the crew, but I was thinking if there was... See, I can't say a lot without spoiling it. It'll get to my next point with that one, so I'll come back to that. But as far as, since you were just talking about the hijackers, I kind of went into the movie with, I guess, maybe a little bit of a false expectation, but I somewhat expected us to get that scenario where you have this situation where it seems like a cut and dry line between... for lack of a better term, the good guys and the bad guys. And I went in thinking that this for sure was going to be a film that takes these hijackers, who for all reasons are the bad guys, and like you said, makes you sympathize with them, makes you understand their side of the story, makes you relate more to their plight, so to speak. And I don't think we got that as much. I think very subtly it was barely, we scratched the surface of it, but I would have liked to see a little more of that, a little bit more of what made them tick, a little bit more of what caused them to find themselves in this situation. And I thought we might get a little bit, and I'm not saying that this would have been good or bad, but I thought we might get a little more, not really political commentary, but a little more look at how people outside we have this American crew, we have an American captain, and then obviously these Somali pirates. And there is some lines that, where he's, not, this doesn't happen outside of America. Some lines like that were really good. But I thought we might get a little more of, you're from America, you take this for granted, or you have these luxuries, that we don't have. A little bit more exploration into that. And amongst the hijackers, I think they did a good job of setting up stuff that they didn't necessarily follow through with. Specifically with one of the hijackers who is, without spoiling anything, from a different village than the rest of them. They made that seem like that was going to be something that was important overall. And yes, he did act slightly different than the rest of them, but they really never, when the one guy kind of yells at him, like, why did you pick him? He's from a different village. They really never explored that fully, in my opinion.
I don't know. I guess it's just different tastes, because I like subtlety, and I think it did what you needed to do, and I think the lines were there that you can connect those dots yourself, and it indicates there was a line about why Tom Hanks is talking to the characters, and they're just asking, like, why can't you do anything else, and they mention how we take all their fish and there's nothing left for them to do, or why can't it's in the trailer, so it's not spoiling. It's like, isn't there anything else other than hijacking? And he talks about, well, maybe in America. And I think that going beyond that, I don't know what more you would get.
I'm not saying, I guess I'm saying with the one hijacker is that they never, yes, he may be considered the hothead, etc., but he never does anything. There's never that tipping point between him and the other three that really solidify that difference that they were trying to kind of convey in that opening scene for me. It was like a scene that you could have left that part out and it would have had no effect on me. You could have left the scene out with them pointing out that he was from a different village. You could have left that complete scene out and it had no effect on the rest of the movie.
I disagree with that, because I think it puts an element of mystery there, and what a big theme.
But an element of mystery that never pays off.
I would disagree with that, because that last moment when it's coming all to a head, he is the figure that's driving it, and he is the figure that his willingness to go further than the other characters is what kind of leads that all to a head.
Right, but you don't need to know that he's from a different village, because by that point through the movie, you just know that he's a hothead, so it would have had the same effect.
Well, I think a key fact. Well, I think why they mention he's from a different village is the big thing that's throughout the film is the idea of who's in control. It's a huge factor throughout it all. It starts with Captain Phillips, asserting his control of the ship, like right when he walks on, to the other guy. The Muse character taking control of the film, and what you see between that other guy from the other tribe and that Muse character is that he is like, Muse seems to have a pretty strong hold of all the other people on his crew except for him. And yeah, maybe the other village thing. I mean, I don't know what more, like, I don't know. In the end, he actually was trying to get. I don't know what more you would do with that, but I think what it's getting at is the fact that he is not going to kind of fall in line with Muse's demands and instructions as much as the other people, because he's from a different village and he's coming from a different background, that he will do what he wants and what he sees fit, and he's always trying to take down Muse and trying to question everything he does. And I think just saying he's from a different village just adds an extra factor of explaining why he's doing that, because he isn't someone who maybe has worked with him in the past, who he's not used to the role that he's given. Unlike, say, the young boy, who is just, he's always kind of, he's always looking for someone else to take control, even if it's Captain Phillips. Right. I think that is the reason why it gets into that. Could they have done more with it? Maybe, but I don't know. I don't think it was set up to be some sort of, oh, we're saying he's from a different village because in the end there's going to be some sort of twist or something. I think it was just
no, I wasn't looking
getting
for a
into
twist
the idea
at all.
of control.
And like I said, I'm more so I'm taking the place of our third person here and trying to play devil's advocate. Like I'm saying, with this point that I was bringing up, I was more so trying to come up with anything that someone might try to criticize the movie about. The character development wasn't as big of an issue for me as I'm probably making it sound. I just think there was room a little bit with the hijackers to have possibly some more character development.
I mean, I do agree with that. I could see us like that. Like I said, those characters are, minus the main guy, are pretty thin. They're pretty much here's your one trait, and that's pretty much it. I mean, even like the driver guy, it does kind of feel like their crew feels like your stereotypical like heist crew from like, you know, a heist movie, right, or something like that, where you have the driver, you have the young kid, you have the hothead. They all kind of fit into those roles. And so I could see that being a huge complaint that, you know, these,
especially given the screen time. I mean, you know, it's basically we have 5 people sharing the screen time for, I don't know, what would you say, like 80% of the film, 90% of the film?
Yeah, I mean, for the most, maybe, yeah, that's probably about it. But
so when you're only seeing those 5 people for that long of a time, and I'm not trying to make it seem like it was hard to sit through or that it felt like a long time or anything like that, but when those are the characters that you're seeing, it kind of maybe points out a little bit more, like you said, how thin a couple of them are.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I think also, just to go back on something else, which is that I think can't be understated, is the fact that this is, you know, it's called Captain Phillips, and that's 100% because this is Tom Hanks' movie from the beginning to end. Like I was relatively impressed with Tom Hanks. I mean, I like him as an actor. I don't think he's given a performance like this in quite a while. There was such an emotional depth, and just it's hard to say, but one of my favorite moments in the entire movie was near the end, and when you kind of see the effect, everything that happened kind of take place, and you see just how shaken that he is. I thought that scene was just incredible. And then
that scene was probably one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, and even before that, like when it's getting to its tipping point, and it's like I was majorly impressed because for the most part, you just like talking about development. Yeah, I could see that with some of the, like, you know, secondary characters, there's not much at all. Most of them are just there as kind of, you know, they're just there as placeholders in some places. But his character, just from where it begins to where it ends, it's amazing. And I thought, like, his performance it's very layered, and it's very nuanced, and it's devastating just seeing what happens to him. I don't think that's too much to say. You know, going through a hijacking experience is devastating, but it is incredible, and I just think I was completely captivated by him on screen.
For me, it's the most I've been affected by one of his performances in almost a decade. I think the last time I would go back to The Terminal as the last time I really was drawn to one of his performances. And I'm a Tom Hanks fan. I've liked him for a long time, but I'm going back at least 10 years since I've seen him in a role that allowed him to do what he did in this film. But I am thinking that this may not be his best role of the year. But that's going off of something I haven't even seen yet, so that's kind of silly. My other point that I was going to try to bring up, and this one maybe resonates with me a little bit more than the character part, was the pacing and the length of the acts of the movie. I felt like, I don't want to say rushed. I don't think that any of the different acts or the different parts in the movie were rushed per se, but I thought a couple of them could have been drawn out sounds bad, but drawn out a little bit. Specifically, one of, I guess, what we would consider after the introduction of the characters and the setting and everything, the first act, when they're on the main ship, I felt like that could have been a little bit longer. It's so hard to do some of these without spoiling it, but especially once the hijackers are on the ship, I felt like once they were on the ship that things were moved along a little too quickly to when we got to the next act, and I would have liked there to be a little more length in that, a little more exploration of what that situation entailed. I don't know how they would have done that specifically, but I felt like maybe it was just a little bit too quickly done. But Dan, I don't think you had that same problem.
No, I mean, that's one thing I thought was perfect with the movie was the pacing. I to me, it didn't really waste a moment. Maybe did it go too quickly? I wish to me that going quickly like that does keep me guessing and not knowing where it's going. I love the fact that the first, before the bookend of the film, like once they get into the water, I thought like from that until the end it was perfectly paced. You had the right.
Oh yeah, no, I agree that. I'm talking about just when they're on the main ship.
That's what I'm talking about. Once he's on his ship until the very end of the film, I thought that.
See, I feel it was paced perfectly once they're in the second. Once they leave the ship, I thought from there on it was perfectly paced. But I felt like when they were on the main ship, I thought there could have been a little more suspense, a little more. Not suspense for the sake of suspense, but I just thought there could have been a little more suspense if that scene or those couple scenes would have been drawn out a little bit more. I don't think that we explored enough of the ship, I guess is the only way I can put that.
I could see that. I mean, I love those scenes. So if they did more of it, I wouldn't be against it. But then you also run into the risk of like how much is too much? Is it?
And I would be interested to see how much was filmed and how much was cut.
What I just based off the real story, like they were on the ship for I think about 10 hours until they were taken. Like it's in the trailer, so it's not giving anything away until they get off the ship into the smaller like little lifeboat. So I could see them on more of a cat and mouse game. I was surprised on how quickly they got off. I thought that would be a little bit drawn out a little bit more. But I'm all for things not being drawn out. I'm all for people getting to the point and getting, because I think when you get into that small confined space, that's when Tom Hanks' performance really takes off.
Yeah.
But I do. I mean, like I mentioned, like that ship. The cool thing about that, the initial hijacking was that cat and mouse game between Tom Hanks, Captain Phillips, and the hijackers, and I was liking that back and forth, how they were playing each other, I agree. And I would be all for seeing more of it. I do think, like you said, I was not expecting it to end as quickly as it does, because you're thinking, okay, well, we're getting going here, we'll see more going, and then suddenly it's like, oh nope, we're done with this, we're moving on to the next part.
So I can see that maybe being another thing that some people might bring up, and they did have room for, like you're saying, more of that cat and mouse game, because that was something that they swayed a little bit away from the real life scenario. In the real life accounts of how that all took place, there was more to it, that they could have done more of that if they wanted to. I don't know how well it would have played on the big screen. And you can read up on the real story if you want to see what that is. One thing you kind of started to touch on there was probably my favorite part of the movie, and the favorite thing that the director did was the juxtaposition of the 4 different captains that we saw. And I really enjoyed seeing, because you got obviously a big look at Captain Phillips, and you saw him in all parts of his all parts of his day. You got to see him. Before he boards the ship, you got to see him in his quarters. You got to see him, interacting with his men in the meeting. In the break room, you got to see him doing his job. You got to see all parts of him, and obviously we get to see the main hijacker and we get to see most of what's going on with him. But they also then kind of had similar scenes that they played with the captain of the naval ship and the captain of the SEAL team. And there was even a scene with one of them in his quarters, just like they had done with Captain Phillips. I just think that they did that very well. And again, somewhat subtly, even though there was two scenes that were both taking place, in the captain's quarters, they didn't, come out and punch you in the face with it. And I just really liked seeing 4 people that were in charge of different things and how they all were completely different, even though they were all, in a way, captains. I don't know if you picked up on any of that while you were watching it, Dan.
Oh, definitely, sure. Because they even, like, Captain Phillips even drops a line, like, we all have bosses, because they're talking about bosses and why he's doing what we're doing. And you find out, I mean, like I mentioned, a big theme of it is control, and within that control is, like, who is the boss of the situation. And we see that, we see that often the boss of the situation is not the one who's actually there, or the person who's really controlling things is maybe not the one who's steering the ship per se. They may be pulling the strings from afar or something like that. And
you even see it when the Navy takes control of the original. I don't know if you call that a cargo ship. The main ship that gets attacked by the hijackers. Even when the Navy takes over that, and you have the second in command there, you get a glimpse of that control.
Yeah, and that was good, because we talked about with Gravity how it adds in some, like, subtext to, like, a really thrilling adventure, and the same thing with this. Greengrass adding in some additional kind of themes and thematic elements that are beyond just, hey, like a thriller type of adventure per se. But yeah, I didn't notice that. And one thing I also wanted to touch on was just with going in with the with the pacing, the editing, and those moments that are really like the high tension moments, like the really ones that are really pushing things, especially like the last, I would 10 minutes or so. The editing in that is so crisp, and it moves from, because you have a lot of different things going on. You have like these all these different parties taking control of this one situation, and just how well it edited each moment, and it stayed on each person just long enough to give you an understanding of what was happening and building up the tension and building it up. It was remarkable, and just it kept pushing you, and finally when it will let go, it's just this release of like emotion. It just this huge release, and then seeing that gets into that last moment, that last just of seeing the effect of all this I don't want to say tragedy, I guess you can call it a tragedy, but this huge event taking place and what happened to Captain Phillips. It's just that you can not enough could be said about how important editing had, what an important role editing took with all this stuff going on, especially in those last moments. So.
Not just the editing. I think some of the camera angles that were, some of the captures that they decided to do in the first place, some of the way the shots were filmed, whether it be the angles or what part of the scene they were focused on, I thought was excellent. So I think just the filming of, as far as which shots they got, the editing, and the soundtrack behind it, I thought all of that was A+.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Greengrass is the guy that's known for shaky cam. He kind of pioneered it with the Bourne films. In this, there's not much shaky cam, but his camera, like, there is enough movement there that gives it that realistic sense, especially when, like, you get a lot of, like, the military cameras and using a lot of their actual cameras, the infrared, and I think that, again, adds into that realism that puts you into that moment, which is important when you get to a real-life story like that. It does have, like, this, like you mentioned, the angles that he uses. He's really great at capturing the moment and placing you just the right spot so you can see what's coming and just getting prepared for it. So yeah, I mean, directing and editing wise, we're both superb.
Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 94% rating, which is obviously very, very good. Like I said, I don't want to make it sound like I'm poo-pooing on this at all. As of now, it's in my top 10. We'll see if it can hold on to that or not. So I definitely still enjoyed the film. Any other aspects of the film that you wanted to bring up? I have one more at the end that I'd like to bring up, but anything that we haven't touched on so far?
Not. No, I think like I said, my bottom line for this would just be, if you're at all a fan of Paul Greengrass's other work, or you enjoy like docudramas, this is for me like a movie, like one of those like movies that makes me love movies, because it takes you into a situation that you would never be in otherwise, and it makes it feel like you're actually there, and it's such a hard thing to accomplish, and Greengrass does it so well. So I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say. What was the last thing you wanted to talk about?
I just wanted to touch on, just because I kind of had brought it up earlier about when we were talking about the Fifth Estate, and I mentioned Jobs. A little tiny bit of controversy with this one as well. Apparently, there's 11 crew members that have sued for nearly $50 million because they're basically attacking Captain Phillips as willful, wanton, and conscious disregard for their safety. And I don't want to give anything away, but if you want to search out just look up, controversy with Captain Phillips. Apparently, they're saying that there was some inaccuracies as far as how this was told, that he didn't do everything he could to avoid the hijacking. The film does touch a little bit on the fact that he was aware of hijackings in the region via some of the scenes in his quarters. But it's saying that he basically kind of ignored warning signs and decided, kind of took the crew's life, according to them, disregarded their safety and didn't do what he could have to avoided certain things. And said that it was a kind of an inaccurate portrayal of him in the movie too, and that he should not be seen as this hero that like he's being made out to be. Like I said, this happens seemingly every time we have a real life or based on a true story thing recently. So I'm not saying that it's, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just pointing it out. So if you are interested in hearing more about this, you can go see the movie and then read up on this and see where you kind of fall on this controversy maybe.
Yeah, when it comes to that stuff, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, to me, being factual doesn't always equal being good. Like, you can have a movie that's 100% truthful and it's just not that interesting, and you can have something that's not factual at all and be amazing. Like, we talked about stuff like The Social Network, and what was said about how that wasn't truthful. And like, I honestly, as long as a movie's good, I'm okay with it. Or also, what are the intentions of the movie? Is the intention, hey, we want to be as truthful and honest as possible? Okay, but even within that, you're gonna adjust some things for dramatic sake, and I think that's fine. And like you mentioned, when you're popular and something becomes as big as this, people are going to come out and they're going to say what they want to get their own piece of the pie. So it's just kind of the business, I guess.
Yeah, with this one, I don't mind it as much, and with the Fifth Estate, I feel like I'm not going to mind it as much. The only one that somewhat got me was the Jobs one, and the fact that like Waz and a lot of the people that were very instrumental in everything would have nothing to do with that version, and instead were supporting a different script altogether. That one, to me, has a little more weight attached to it than what I'm seeing with what I've read on these two. But would you recommend Mr. Booth Ninja go see this one or not?
I would 100% recommend it. I saw it in IMAX. I don't necessarily think it needs to be seen in IMAX. It didn't really add much to it. It was just the way the timings worked out. But I would 100% recommend anyone seeing this. If you're a fan of movies, I couldn't understand a reason why you would not enjoy this at least. Maybe you won't love it as much as I did, but I think you would enjoy it 100%.
I think you should. I think you should see it too. I think as far as 2013 goes, this is one of the movies that you have to see in order to make an accurate listing or opinion on the year overall and where things fall. This is not one that you can just ignore that it exists and make an accurate ranking system at the end of the year. I put way too much into lists and ranking systems, etc. But it's kind of like last year, like when I hadn't seen a couple movies going into the end of the year, I knew I had to see them because they were so whether it be critically acclaimed or on so many people's lists. So this is one that most people that are big movie fans should see. It's one of the must-sees of 2013.
100% agreed. So those are our takes on Captain Phillips. If you agree or disagree with us, feel free to comment or send your hateful or gleeful messages towards us. And at the end of the podcast, we'll get into how to send us our feedback. So we're going to take another quick break here and come back with a look at coming attractions and get into listener feedback.
Pull Bag is the GCRN's place for everything you need in the comic book world. We focus on new and current comics, while also tackling a few back issues here and there. So join the entire GCRN crew and see what issues the hosts have with today's panels. You can find the Pull Bag on iTunes and geekcastradio.com. Make your great escape into comics.
And welcome back. We're to MWIRE Weekly. To finish out the show, we're just going to take a look ahead to next week and finish out with some listener feedback. Coming to theaters for next weekend, there are a few big films, notably Carrie, the second or third remake of the classic Stephen King novel. Also, Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger will be hitting the screen together again in the crime prison thriller Escape Plan. Also, like we mentioned earlier in the film, The Fifth Estate, the movie about the founder of WikiLeaks, will be coming out. And also coming out in very limited release, I believe, in New York and LA, is 12 Years a Slave, which is getting rave reviews. It won the Audience Award at TIFF earlier in the year, which is a good indication of future awards coming its plate. So we'll be discussing possibly one or two of those next week. We'll hopefully have a better idea, and we'll make sure to post that on Facebook so you have an idea of what we'll be going over. Coming to DVD or Blu-ray, some notable films. Maybe not notable, but The Colony, starring a few people like Lawrence Fishburne. I haven't heard many good things about it. I haven't seen it myself. Also, the big summer comedy from this past year, starring Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy, The Heat. Also, talking about hijacking is the Danish film Hijacking, which I've heard a lot of great things about. And after seeing Captain Phillips, I'm kind of curious about how that works, because I believe it's about similar storyline about Somali pirates as well, but it's about a Danish ship that was taken over. So good timing, I guess, with that release. Also coming out is Maniac, starring Frodo himself as a maniac killer. And the interesting thing about that film, it's shot all in first person. So that might, for horror fans out there is that coming out. And finishing out is Pacific Rim, the big film from this past summer. I know all three of us are big fans. I know I will be picking up my copy on Tuesday when that comes out for sure. And also Plush, a movie I'm not really familiar with, but it is coming out. So sounds intriguing, I guess. I'm not sure. So of any of those films and coming to DVD and Blu-ray, anything you guys would recommend?
I mean, obviously Pacific Rim, the Blu-ray 3D combo pack, Blu-ray combo pack, 2-disc DVD special edition, Ultraviolet, they got all that stuff. Special features, there's audio commentary by Del Toro. There's a bunch of other things that I'd have to read more into them to see what they're going to be. There's deleted scenes, blooper reels, so the digital artistry of Pacific Rim, so that's something I'll definitely be picking up.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab the Blu-ray 3D, the 3D 2D Blu-ray DVD combo pack. The only thing that really bothers me, I hate Ultraviolet.
Yeah, that is a pain of all pains.
But it's okay, because they give you the DVD and I can rip that.
True. I don't, but to me, if I have a Blu-ray of something, I'm not going to watch it at my computer. Maybe if I'm going to rewatch it, but I'd rather just watch the Blu-ray. So.
Oh, no, I totally get that. I mean, I have, the problem is I try and get a digital copy of anything that I have, because I can get an HD version of it off of iTunes. Now, I know that Blu-ray is better than any downloadable media form you can get right now. I'm very much aware of that. I'm not, so no one needs to jump all over me for that. I just like to have the idea of, of having the digital copy, there and ready. Like if I wanted to put it on my iPad to take to work, or if I wanted to, because very slowly, it's the digital copy is kind of becoming more important to me, being an Apple user, because they're slowly removing the CD DVD drives from their computers, which doesn't really bother me because I don't use my DVD drive for anything other than burning music CDs from my car. But I would, moral of the story is Ultraviolet is retarded and or just dumb. I'm sorry. I would rather just have a digital copy of it.
Yeah, I agree. So those are coming out on theaters and Blu-rays. A lot of good stuff coming out for sure. Now we're just going to jump into our feedback from last week. Last week we asked you all the question: do you buy snacks at the concession stands at movie theaters, and do you sneak it in? And if you do, what do you bring? Either what do you buy or what do you sneak in? And got a lot of great feedback. A lot of people with differing opinions on the topic.
We got a lot of feedback. Just in general. So yeah, thank you to everybody.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. We're glad people are listening, because it's great to talk about movies, but it's even more exciting knowing people actually hearing what you're saying. So, but of all the feedback we got about this topic, I'm just gonna pick out one that caught my eye, which was from Dragano. I'm guessing that's not his real name, but you never know. I can say his because it could be a girl. You never know. Dragano says, "I sneak in my food, James Bond style, of course. No way I'm paying $7 for a soda. I might grab a popcorn here or there, but mostly if they have those taste stations where you can add different flavors to your popcorn. Those things are fantastic." So it seems like he is more on the sneaking in side of things and not actually spending the money because of prices.
I do like that Plato's Lament says about Junior Mints, they work as candy and breath mints, perfect date snack.
That's very true.
I'm just a curmudgeon, I guess. I can't stand when people sneak stuff into the theater. It bothers me, and I don't know why. I used to even have a relationship with a girl, and when I went to movies with her and her best friend and her fiance or husband, whatever they would always stop at the gas station or Target or something beforehand and get stuff, and they'd always be like, "Aren't you going to get anything?" And I'm like, "No." And then I would go to the concession stand of the movie and get something. For some reason, it bothers me. I don't understand why, but it does. And I am someone who I never get any of the snacks. And I for sure don't get any of the freaking like chicken tenders or any of like that type of stuff that they sell, because that is even more ridiculously overpriced. But I do always get myself a soft drink, and usually, depending on how hungry I am, I get myself like a small popcorn or something. But I just, for some reason, I'm against sneaking snacks.
Is that because you're trying to support your local theater, or?
Like I said, I have no good reason for it. It just, for some reason, inside me bothers me when I see people sneaking stuff in or cracking open cans of pop or pulling this or that out of their purse. I don't know why it bothers me. I will say though that there are some theaters where they have the recliners and you can actually have a meal there. Or one time I think I got like M&Ms or something, and they brought them to me in like a little plastic wine glass as I was reclined back in the easy chair. That was kind of interesting. But I don't know. Like I said, I have no logical reason. I just don't like it when people sneak stuff in.
I tend to bring. I don't sneak stuff in. I usually don't. It's kind of interesting. My wife and we've gone to the movies a lot. We've been together for the last 10 years or so. Our first date was actually to see The Terminal, and on that date we ordered a Coke cherry Coke, and ever since then we always, if we get soda for the last 10 years at a movie, it's always been cherry Coke. So it's just kind of this random thing we do.
I always get
but
Pib.
Yeah, what was that?
I always get Pib, or whatever they call it, Pib Extra, Mr. Pib.
I can understand that, but yeah, I don't usually buy food. If I'm not a big popcorn fan, I might get pretzels. They have like these soft pretzels with cheese, but I usually don't. That's only if like I'm starving, or say I do like one of my theaters I frequent the most has a bar, and they always have themed drinks, which are cool, usually related to the movies and stuff like that. And I'm all for drinking while watching movies. So that I'm a fan of. They are kind of pricey, but as long as they're good, I'm okay with it. Like, I am kind of since I do see a lot of movies, I am on the side of I'm going to support the movie theater because that's where they get their money from. And so, because I like movies and I want to see theaters open, I do spend money and I don't tend to sneak things in. If I do, it's more so candy, because I do think, if anything, candy may be the most ridiculously thing that's overpriced. But if do sneak something in, I make sure I buy something too, just to make myself feel fine about it.
The two nearest and closest theaters to me are both AMC theaters, and so obviously I have the little AMC membership or whatever. So I mean, I just get a drink and a popcorn, and it cost me like $10. So it's not like it's ridiculous. I mean, it is expensive, I guess, but it's not like I'm not paying $7 for a drink. So.
And you're there for, what, like 2-3 hours? So if you can't go out with a drink, that's more on you than anything. But I guess, Powers, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, since you work at one. So.
Well, okay, yeah, the concessions thing is a big deal. I mean, my wife she saw the question. She's a general manager at another theater in the chain that I work for, and she wanted to reply because obviously concessions is like her. That's like a big thing, and obviously everyone in the forum was, I sneak stuff in, and she just wanted to say so. I said, don't say anything,
I would have been on her side.
And that's fine, but when I go to the theater, I don't. First of all, I get passes, so I don't pay to see movies, like, ever. And one of the perks of my job is sometimes I get to see them like 2 or 3 days earlier than everybody else. But when I go to the movies, I don't go. I'm more likely to go to the concession stand and get something if the concession stand and the box office are two separate places. At the theater at the theater that we work for, the concession stand and the box office, they're the same person. So when you walk up to the counter, you get your tickets and you order your food. The problem is, for me, I mean, I don't go to the movies at the last minute, but I hate standing in line behind people that are trying to choose, first of all, what movie they want to see, and second, what beverage or what they want, what popcorn they want.
Oh, that'd be awful.
And it's just, so it's like you're wasting more time. So most of the time I don't even bother ordering any food or anything, because I just want my freaking tickets, and I've already been in line behind 3 other people that took 20 minutes deciding whatever they wanted. But yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with theater food. I get it. The pretzels, I've never had the pretzels from where we work, mainly because I'm a fan of like the pretzel sticks, like the soft pretzel sticks for dipping, than the entire pretzel. But
that's what we get. We get the pretzel sticks, the like mini pretzels that are like they come in the same thing as like the nachos, basically.
Yeah, I will say I do like movie theater popcorn. I do not like it. Was really interesting because I was working at a movie theater before I worked at the one I work at now, which is where I got all my training, and they had been open for 4 years, and their popcorn was really, really good. And when I came to work at the theater that I'm at now, it was a brand new building. It had only been open for 2 months when I started working there, and the popcorn tasted awful. And it took about 3 or 4 years for it to actually taste good, because the kettles, the popcorn kettles, were brand new. I mean, they washed them every night, but through use, like just something, through the kettles being used regularly, just that adds to, it's I don't know what you call it. It's like seasoning a kettle or something like that. But yeah, it took a good 2 or 3 years before I was actually able to eat the popcorn, and now I usually have, like, after the last movie starts, I go downstairs and get a bag of popcorn or something. But I like movie theater food. I think my favorite is peanut M&Ms or Sour Patch Kids.
Good choices. All right. Anything else on that question before we move into the question for next week?
Nope.
All right. Well, for next week, our question is on a different topic entirely. But what is that one actor or actress that influences your decision to go see a movie, either causing you to go see it or making you not want to see it? Who is it, and why do they have that effect on you?
Basically, Yeah, I would look at it this way. Take like the genre of movie, the plot line, the setting that you like that you would be completely interested in. Like you're the perfect setup for a movie. Which actor or actress gets, if they got cast in that movie, would turn you away from it, and vice versa. If there's a genre or a setting or a plot type story that you would be completely against in every other setting, which actor or actress, if they were tied to that movie, would all of a sudden you be willing to go see it in the theater?
Man, I don't know how to answer the first part. Like, I don't know what could make me not go see a movie that I was interested in. Like,
there's a couple people that could, for me.
I just could, but see, that's the thing for me. I mean, I'm not trying to answer the question now, but it's kind of, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, but then one thing is like off, it's like I still might want to go see if it's actually a duck.
I can see that. I guess if you had to pick someone that was if you had like all the actors or actresses in the world and you had to pick someone that would have the greatest chance to make you not want to see it, who would it be?
For instance, we talked about it earlier, right? Hayden Christensen. Awful in the prequels. I actually didn't mind him in Jumper.
Yeah. And for me, I have some actors and actresses that are it depends what movie they're in, but there are a couple that I just, for some reason, can't stand no matter what they're in. And there's a couple that I will see every movie they're in no matter what.
And everybody will have to wait till next week to find out what that is.
And there are a number of ways that you can contact us. You can call the voicemail line at 502-526-5821. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Just include in the subject line MWIRE Weekly. You can visit the forums or the episode post at geekcastradio.com. You can visit our Facebook page by searching Geekcast Radio Network, or you can contact us on Twitter. We are our show in general is at Geekcast Radio using the hashtag MWIRE. You can also contact us individually on Twitter. What are all of your Twitter names?
Mine's just Optimus Solo.
Mine is at BoothNinja81.
And I'm at Movie Revolt. So, on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to thank you all for joining us on MWIRE Weekly, and we hope to see you next week.